Hello everyone, I am very happy to be part of this early career marathon today with you. I am Ai Ito. I am currently an assistant professor at the French Chinese Institute of Zhenmin University of China in Suzhou. I am going to share with you today some results of my research through this presentation entitled Positive Effects of a Leader's Self-Disclosure of a Traumatic Experience. What is leader self-disclosure of a traumatic experience? Before I tell you more about what it is, I would like to invite you all to watch all together this video which describes what it is. In 2016, more exactly May 2016, Sheryl Sandberg, the current COO of Facebook, started her speech at the graduation ceremony of the University of Berkeley in what we call an unusual way. She started her speech by opening up about the sudden and hurtful loss of her husband that had happened the year before. Here is what she had to say.
Today I'm going to try to tell you what I learned in death. I've not spoken about this publicly before, and it's hard, but I promise not to blow my nose on this beautiful Berkeley rose. One year and 13 days ago, I lost my husband, Dave. His death was sudden and unexpected. We were in Mexico celebrating a friend's 50th birthday party. I took a nap. He went to work out. What followed was the unthinkable. I walked into a gym to find him lying on the floor. I flew home to tell my children that their father was gone. I watched his casket being lowered into the ground. For many months afterwards, and at many times since, I was swallowed in the deep fog of grief, what I think of as the void, an emptiness that fills your heart and your lungs, constricts your ability to think or even to breathe. Dave's death changed me in very profound ways. I learned about the depths of sadness and the brutality of loss. But I also learned that when life sucks you under, you can kick against the bottom, find the surface, and breathe again. I learned that in the face of the void, or in the face of any challenge, you can choose joy and meaning. I'm sharing this with you today in the hopes that on this day in your lives, with all the momentum and the joy, you can learn in life the lessons I only learned in death. Lessons about hope, about strength, and about the light within us that will not be extinguished.
It is interesting to note that in June 2016, so the month following the speech of Sheryl Sandberg, the former CEO of Danone started his speech in a very similar way. So Emmanuel Faber also started his speech at the graduation ceremony of a French business school by sharing the traumatic experience that he had overcome. What does this tell us? I think it hints that leader self-disclosure of traumatic experience is the kind of verbal tool that can be used by both male and female leaders. How do I conceptualize leader self-disclosure of a traumatic experience? Based on what we have watched together right now, it is a phenomena that is situated at the beginning of a speech. It is a voluntary act that the leader has decided to share purposefully. Thus, it requires emotional control. This means that we don't expect the leader to burst out into tears, because the leader would lose credibility in the eyes of his or her followers. The main goal to share such poignant story is to share lessons learned of that past experience. There are potential benefits to opening up in public, which may motivate the leader to open up. First, it shortens the psychological distance perceived by followers toward the leader. As a result, followers feel closer and more comparable to the leader. Second, it also helps the leader to go through the mourning process of the hard experience and to accept more and acknowledge more what has happened to him or her. In this presentation, I would like to answer to two research questions. The first question asks, what are the processes by which leader self-disclosure bolsters follower perceptions of charisma? The second question asks, what are the possible process effects of leader self-disclosure on follower perceptions of charisma towards a leader? To answer to these questions, I use the theory of social exchange. So the social exchange theory is a concept based on the idea that a relationship between two people is created through a process of cost-benefit exchange. Based on the social exchange framework, the hypothesis of this study states that follower trust in the leader has a stronger mediating effect on the relationship between charisma and follower gratitude for participants exposed to a speech of a leader who self-discloses a traumatic experience in comparison with those exposed to a speech with no disclosure at all. How do we define charisma in this research? Originally, Weber, the sociologist, defined charisma as a certain quality of an individual personality by virtue of which he or she is set apart from ordinary men or women and treated as endowed with supernatural powers, superhuman, or at least specifically exceptional powers or qualities. One of the most recent definition of charisma in the charismatic leadership literature is the following, and it is the one on which this research builds upon. So Antonakis and colleagues define charisma as the symbolic leader influence rooted in emotional and ideological foundations. The reason I was motivated to conduct this research project is because I noticed some gaps in the charismatic leadership literature. So I noticed that there is a lack of clarity about the kind of relatable experiences shared by charismatic leaders. And there's also no established relationship between the variables of charisma and gratitude, although the literature is hinting that there might be a link. So this is where I should explain what is the link between charisma and gratitude. So as I was telling you just before, the literature hints a lot that there is a connection between those two variables. So first of all, in the charismatic leadership literature, there is some work which shows that charisma predicts trust. Second, there is work that in the leadership literature, charismatic leadership literature again, which shows that trust and gratitude result from the favorable social exchange between leaders and followers. And there's also research in social psychology, which hints that gratitude is indicative of leadership effectiveness, meaning that gratitude is probably an outcome of leader charisma. So for example, there is some research conducted by Grant and Gino, which shows that when a person expresses gratitude to the helper will feel that his or her behavior is increased by their sense of self-efficacy and self-worth. So these 3 points taken together hint that charisma predicts gratitude, and thus that gratitude is probably an outcome of charisma. To test such hypothesis, we use the vignette experimental method. Our sample included 165 Chinese students. We had two conditions, which were the experimental one or the control condition. All students were from a Chinese business school enrolled in English-speaking courses, and thus the questionnaire distributed to them was in English. How did we conduct the study? So let me explain you how the experiment was conducted. In the experiment condition, we had 85 students who read the vignette of a commencement address with self-disclosure. In the control condition, we had 80 students who read the vignette of a leader with no self-disclosure. After participants read one of the two vignettes, they were asked to fill the questionnaire, which asked to measure the charisma, the level of charisma of the leader, and also which asks to what extent the leader looks trustworthy and to what extent they feel gratitude after having read the vignette. Sorry. Results show that there is a statistically significant difference between the two groups. Okay, and thus the hypothesis was confirmed. This means that the mediating effect of follower trust on the relationship between charisma and follower gratitude is stronger for participants in the experimental condition who read the vignette with self-disclosure than for participants who were in the control condition and read the vignette with no disclosure. So here is a diagram showing the results of our experiment and of our mediation effect, and it shows that in fact trust mediates charisma and gratitude more for the experimental group than for the condition group. To conclude, this research shows that leader self-disclosure bolsters follower trust and gratitude at the same time. Second, this research shows that gratitude should be considered in the charismatic leadership process, although it hasn't been until now. Lastly, this research shows that future research should focus more on the effect of leader gender, follower sex, and culture. In fact, we can imagine that leader self-disclosure does not have the same effect, for example, in the United States and maybe in China. We can also imagine that the effect of leader self-disclosure will be different depending on the leader is a woman or a man, and also depending on the recipients, meaning if the followers are men or women. Here is my list of references. And I would like to thank you all for your attention.